Today's webinar will be presented by Tal Saraf. Tal is the General Manager of Amazon CloudFront, AWS's content distribution service, and Amazon Route 53, AWS's DNS service. Tal is responsible for the overall development, management, and product direction of the CloudFront and Route 53 businesses. Welcome, Tal.
Thanks, Jared. As Jared said, I'm the General Manager for Amazon CloudFront and Route 53. I've been with Amazon for about 3.5 years. Before that, I was with Microsoft for 16 years. So first, let me walk through today's agenda. So we're going to give a brief overview of Amazon CloudFront, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Then we're going to look at some common needs and challenges that our customers tell us they face that lead them to use a content delivery network. And then we're going to walk through some customer examples around how they're using CloudFront. I'll move on to pricing options with CloudFront, and then we'll answer some questions. If there's time, we'll also walk through a quick demonstration of Amazon CloudFront, and if not, I'll walk you through how you'll get started. So with that, let's get going. I'm going to do an overview of Amazon CloudFront. As you think about CloudFront, really the consistent things we hear in terms of from customers about why CloudFront manages them is 6 of these areas that we'll cover right now. First has to do with low latency. Obviously, when you have a website, it's important to improve the time to download for users around the world, and that really boils down to the latency they experience in getting to your website. So having a global presence allows for the ability to scale that website. High bandwidth is the other, particularly for video. There's the ability to stream and take advantage of the bandwidth-heavy applications that can be distributed around the globe. The redundancy, certainly not only do we shield your origin, but being able to route users to any of our existing locations also is a clear benefit. And then the scalability of a CDN. So you're not limited by just your own origin or the number of servers that you have, but it's really the fleet of servers we have across our network of 22 locations. And when we think about that global footprint, it really comes down to having the right geographic areas to provide that low latency experience. And we'll talk through why that matters in a few minutes. And then finally, one of the key benefits we've had from the very beginning is our transparent pricing for Amazon CloudFront, where you pay as you go. So there's no upfront commitments, no long-term contracts required. You can start and stop using CloudFront as you like and adjust your usage based on the needs of your business, your applications, or how customers interact with your website. So with that, again, in terms of the customer benefits, we talked a little bit about this in the previous slide, but let me just kind of put it in terms of the experience you and your customers experience. So first, that lower latency, higher throughput means that pages load faster. You don't see the bouncing rates as demands come onto your server, and you're forced to kind of scale up the number of origin servers you have. Certainly, there are SEO benefits as well. Various search engines look at site speed and load times as important in terms of ranking a website. And here we cite a study by Google that showed every half a second of page load time drops customer traffic on average by 20%. So that's why Google factors it into their page load in terms of the quality score. We certainly have seen that as Amazon, the retailer, decreasing the load time is very important to return customers and actually customers clicking through and purchasing a good on the retail side of our business. Mobile users is another area. Whenever you have a set of users who are over limited bandwidth connections, increasing the speed at which they're able to load up that site is very important to them. Bringing the site closer to where those end users are also is very important. We've talked a bunch already about offloading your own web servers or your own origins. And then cost. I mean, certainly, if you're running your own site, you're paying for bandwidth, either through your hoster or to your own network operations center. And at that point, you're paying for that, for the spikiness of your use, where when you spread it across all of Amazon, you're able to balance it out and take advantage of the scale benefits that we are able to purchase in our own transit purchasing power. And then having that reliability and scalability, I think, is also very important as well. Being able to have the redundancy across multiple servers, the redundancy across a fleet of locations matters as well. So if I think about the key features for CloudFront, we're just going to summarize some of the key ones. CloudFront, we first launched CloudFront in November of 2008. Been very, very happy with the reaction to Amazon CloudFront. Was thrilled again recently to win the Streaming Magazine Editor's Choice for the second year in a row for the best CDN in Europe. So part of that has to do with features. Part of that has to do with reliability. Let's spend a little time talking through the features themselves. So we've certainly added the ability to, over the last 3 years, added the ability to do flash delivery via RTMP, as well as, of course, standard HTTP delivery, whether it's objects or streaming through HTML5. Streaming, we offer both live and video on demand streaming. We have the ability to do adaptive bitrate streaming. In terms of file delivery, you're able to use HTTP as you would expect, but also to lock down and protect your files through HTTPS with end-to-end encryption. You have the ability to make some objects private as well. The private content has to do with both locking down objects. Let's say you're selling a piece of software or a game or a video. You can protect that content and hand out authentication keys to users who have purchased that content and explicitly block anyone else. Or, of course, if you have a public website, you can make everything public. So you have the ability to do public and private content. We also have added the ability to do programmatic invalidation. So this is an area where we've heard this request from customers, and we're glad to add it. Essentially, the ability to remove objects from our cache. So, CloudFront will go out and serve content and then keep it a local copy in each of our edge locations where that request is made. But there are times where you've either updated that content and want to remove it, or you've made, there's something wrong with that piece of content that causes you to remove it. So things I hear are, hey, I added the wrong image, or I've updated a piece of software, what have you. So that's how you'd use programmatic invalidation. And then, of course, in terms of detailed access logs, the ability to have the full details of how people are using your content, from where, how they're using it, where they're coming from. That's all in a W3C format. So you can use any industry compliant tool you like. There's a sample application that we'll talk through later in this presentation, but you can use any tool you like there and get full information of who's using your content from where and how. And then all of this has the ability to use a console as well. So you have the ability to have this web user interface in AWS's console to let you interact with the full capabilities of our site. And then there's an API as well. So you have programmatic access to all this, or you can use the console. It's up to you, and you can build that into your own applications. And then origin choice. So certainly we work seamlessly out of the box with Amazon S3, a simple storage service, as well as our Elastic Compute Cloud. So you can use either of those as origins, or you can use any origin you like, your own web server, wherever that happens to be. So you have full control and choice there. So those are the key features of CloudFront for those of you who aren't as familiar with it. And now let's talk about how this works. So in this diagram, you'll see a user initiates a request for content on your website. That request gets routed to the nearest edge location. So we build these edge locations, these CloudFront locations at key areas around the world where we can offer up low latency and connectivity in carrier-neutral locations. And then if that object is cached, if it's already there, if it's a very popular item, it would immediately be transferred back to that user. There's no request made to S3 or any other origin. That's the happy case where the object exists in the cache because it's previously been requested. There's another case where it's a brand new request. In case it's a brand new request, same thing, the user makes a request, the user still gets routed to the nearest edge location, and then if it's not, we determine it's not in cache, we'll go back to the origin, we'll make a request from the origin, whether that's S3 or your custom origin. Then we'll transfer that content back from the origin to each of to that edge location, and then the data is transferred from the edge location back to the end user, and then is cached. So that's how it works in the case that the object has not been stored in cache. And each of those edge locations maintains its own separate cache. Okay, so as you think about how you architect a solution with CloudFront, we've talked about a bunch of different options. Here's an architectural diagram that kind of demonstrates it. So if you look, there are kind of 3 different examples that we've shown here, and I'll walk you through each of them. Hopefully you can see my mouse pointer. Let's see if you get it. Okay, so here we go. So I'm just going to point to this box over here. This is the case of a live source. So a live source would go back. That origin would go back to EC2, our Elastic Compute Cloud, running say Flash Media Server, and that would then speak to a CloudFront location that would serve up the content to the end user. Here's our end user over here. In the case that we just walked through, as you'll recall, the end user made the request from CloudFront. CloudFront made the request, can make a request either to your private origin, EC2, or S3. So that's the case we've talked about, and this is the S3 case. So if the user makes a request from CloudFront and the object's not in CloudFront, you either go to S3, your own custom origin, or EC2. So those are kind of the 3 cases on that type of content. The other piece of content is live, in the case that you want to do live encoding with a live video source. So that's what this diagram represents. Great. So I'm going to keep going. Let's talk about our points of presence. So we kind of mentioned this already. We're in 22 locations around the globe. So you'll see that we're in North America. We're in these 6 locations in Europe. We just recently added a location in South America, and we're in these 3 locations currently in Asia. So that kind of wraps up the 22 locations we're in around the globe. You know, we started CloudFront with just 14 locations. We felt like those were the right 14 to begin with. We've continued to add new locations added to that global footprint as our usage has grown around the world, both from a capacity perspective as well as decreasing latency. So we look for areas where we want to improve latency further, and we're picking just the ones that are going to make a difference to our customers and their customers by looking through where latency could be improved by continuing to add those capabilities. So that's how we've been working through the addition of locations, and you'll continue to see us grow that global footprint as time goes on. Great. So I alluded to this a little bit in the previous slide, but I kind of want to recap kind of that in the beginning of 2009 was one of our first pricing reductions. We reduced to a new, added new pricing tiers. We also added some of those capabilities I mentioned earlier in terms of detailed access logging, that management console to give us a web user interface on top of our API. We added the ability to have private content, and we added the ability to stream using Adobe's Flash Media Servers. We run them built in each of our edge locations. Then in 2010, we added one of those additional Asian locations I talked about. We added the ability to have private streaming, so locking down your streams if you want to sell your streams. Again, in second quarter, we dropped prices publicly. We also added that end-to-end HTTPS support. We lowered our minimum TTL down to an hour, extended the access logs for streaming. We added another location in New York. Later that same year, in third quarter, we extended the access logs based on customer feedback. We added the ability to have default root objects. So the root objects let you entirely serve your website without using any kind of web server at all. You could host everything just directly with CloudFront. And then the ability to have programmatic invalidation. So programmatic invalidation, again, is the ability to remove objects from cache once they've already been entered into cache. Let's say you add a new version of software or a new object. And then extended in the last part of last year by letting you choose any origin you want, whether it be simple storage service, the Elastic Compute Cloud, or any origin you like. And then came out of beta, added an SLA for CloudFront, and then added another location in Florida, as you can see. And so far this year, continue that pace of expansion. So we added our 6 locations. We added 2 more locations in Europe this year, both Paris in Q1 and Stockholm in Q2. One of the things we haven't talked about so far is for enterprise customers or people who want to share multiple accounts and restrict who has access to what within CloudFront. We extended CloudFront to work with AWS's identity and access management. Here you can have multiple accounts and really have differentiated access, either based on role or account, so you can limit who has access to what in terms of your configuration. So it's a great enterprise feature. And then, as I mentioned, added live streaming that we talked through a little bit. We also dropped the price again for CloudFront and for transit, and working with S3 and some of the other services. Now inbound traffic into AWS is free. So if you have your own origin, or if you're uploading into AWS, it actually doesn't cost anything on the inbound side. And then again, so far in this quarter, in Q3, we added that Brazil location that we talked about, and we added yet another 4th California location. So that's kind of the pace we've been operating at. You'll continue to see us innovate and add new capabilities and drive down costs further. So, what do our customers tell us that they're expecting from a great CDN? Well, we've talked about some of this already in terms of having great performance either through low latency or high throughput to a global audience, being able to deliver a wide range of supported clients and devices, being able to scale for unpredictable spikes in demand. This is something we see over and over again. I'll walk you through just one example, but there was another one literally last night. It just happens that frequently. Being able to control for secure content when you're selling content or videos, being able to have higher quality video streaming, being able to analyze and track usage patterns through analytics and reporting based on access logs, and then being able to easily configure and manage in a very cost-effective way take advantage of our continuous investment in updates to servers and services within AWS. So that's what we hear over and over again. So let's walk through some of those. First, let's talk a little bit about performance. So this is one that we've heard questions about over and over again, so I want to spend some time on it. Amazon is very much a metrics-driven company. Some of you maybe have heard that. So as part of that process, we commissioned Gomez to create a test. They designed the test, and they conducted it using each of their end locations. So we did a backbone test, and we did essentially a to-the-glass, a last-mile test. And the focus here was to really understand that last-mile experience. It's very easy, to look at just the backbone tests, and backbone tests don't tell you a whole lot because your customers, your viewers, your users don't live in data centers, they live in homes, right, or they're in businesses. And so it's that last mile, it's what we like to think of to the glass, like to my laptop, to my desktop, that really matters. And here, we did a comparison with 3 of the major, I'd say the major CDNs other than CloudFront. In these cases, you'll see CloudFront is yellow, and then the other the CDNs are comparison A, B, and C. You can pretty much guess who they are. They're the major ones. And what we found is CloudFront is as good or better than the other CDNs in terms of performance. And here, this was a test run from September 17th to October 1st. We've actually been running this test for months and months. There's newer versions of this data. There's older versions of the data. We just picked a particular point in time about a month ago to create this particular slide deck, but we could have updated it quite easily. So anyway, you'll see we're as faster to the glass, last mile, which is really what matters to customers. And so same thing, actually similar results in Europe and North America. For some reason, whoever created the slide, there's some differences here. The graph on the left is large objects, and the one on the right is small. So you'll see the scales are the same, and the objects sizes are different, which is why the results are different. But it's the relative performance that matters. So you can see they're kind of on par in Europe. They're on par a little faster in North America. And again, this was that same time period. In the case for Europe, it was almost 66,000 observations. In the case of North America, it was almost 89,000 observations, just the number of end nodes that Gomez uses or has available to run a test. That's the difference in the number of measurements. So going through that, CloudFront has to essentially win Amazon.com's video. There's no usage. There's no ingrained assumption at Amazon that just because CloudFront is Amazon CDN that the rest of Amazon will use us. You have to win that business. And here's a quote from the Amazon.com video games download store. They moved to CloudFront and they saw a dramatic increase in download speed, and that really speaks to that performance benefit that we saw. Amazon's long history of using CDNs, and various groups in Amazon have been very happy with the results of CloudFront, and more Amazon.com traffic is actually moving onto CloudFront from other CDNs. So that was that point. In terms of Second Life, this is an example of global performance. They have residents or users around the world who are downloading their viewer and downloading map tiles, and Second Life has essentially been running their own, I'll call it mini CDN for quite a while. And what they found is they would store that content in S3, and then they would download it, either through S3 or their own origin. And what they found was a significant reduced time it took people to download that viewer by moving to CloudFront globally. Same thing true. IMDb. Think of this as another good name in terms of usage. Essentially, they wanted the fastest possible download. IMDb has moved to building not just that website that people have come to know and love for viewing information about movies, but also now have moved into iPhone and mobile applications as well. And they're hosting search and video files on CloudFront and have 0 servers to maintain that. So they're taking advantage of the reliability, the scalability for that worldwide footprint they got from CloudFront. So, there's a full range of clients, and we talked through some examples where people have built applications already, either focusing on HTML5 for the broadest set of delivery, using Flash, Adobe's RTMP protocol for devices that support that, using HTTP streaming for iOS for the Apple devices, and then obviously in many cases using various versions of HTML for Android primarily. So you've got a full range of options there. You can take advantage of all those various mobile clients and have full control over the origin for streaming with the reliability and the SLA of CloudFront. So another example of someone who's done that is PBS. They were using if you read the case study on our webpage, you'll find that they were using another CDN before CloudFront, and they found that they have less errors in video streaming and have better performance with CloudFront. And they've not only have been streaming to computers, right, PCs and Macs, but they've also been creating applications around the various iOS devices and have, again, kind of taken the advantage of the simplicity and reliability of CloudFront with the speed benefits and frankly the performance benefits that they've seen by making that switch. So then, scalability, there's a lot of aspects to scalability, and part of that, one of the things that customers tend to think a lot about, particularly as they're building either new applications, new games, new ad campaigns, is the unpredictability of spikes. Having the reliability to scale, that's just part of our DNA. That's just part of what we've always had with our website for over 15 years. And so from the very beginning, we wanted to provide a self-service sign-up and configuration to let customers get set up, create those new distribution in minutes, have that on-demand scalability with the access to that global worldwide network, and really design it for capacity from the ground up. So I mentioned this happens all the time. I literally found out about a case at 6 a.m. this morning Pacific where someone did this who scaled over this number, but we wrote the slide a while ago. This is a case where a customer, who on a steady state usage usually doesn't even pop up on my radar. I don't really think of them very much, except for this particular case. They do ads related to television events, and you'll see that there's these kind of distinct increases in their usage. At one point, they peaked up to over 60 gigabits per second and then dropped back down. This related to a campaign they're doing around a television show, and so it's spiked. These times on the bottom are all specific, so you'll see that kind of for us, 2 p.m. in the afternoon is really when people on the East Coast started seeing that campaign. And then later in the day, as folks in Central and toward the last peak, people on the West Coast started to see that campaign. And then they kind of continued, right up to the television show in each of those time zones, and then kind of drop down from there. So that's part of that being able to scale for those unpredictable spikes. So we can certainly handle those. Another has to do with EA Playfish. So Playfish has been a long time customer on Amazon and AWS. Their use of CloudFront has been over multiple years, and each of their games kind of grows, both in terms of unique users, which they at one point when we did this case study talked about 50 million unique users a month, 10 million uniques a day, over 1.5 million an hour, and that speaks to that unpredictability. They never really know how spiky a particular game is going to be or how many requests they're going to get. At one point, they were seeing 45 million unique requests per hour for a single game at peak. When they think about the analytics around those events, they create over 500 million events per day that they want to analyze, which generates terabytes of analytic data a month, and they're able to crunch that through our Elastic MapReduce service. So having that integration, not only to create those access logs and put them in your S3 bucket, which in a format that you can use any tool you like, but also creating that tool like Elastic MapReduce that let you crunch them and know, in their case, what do their users like about their games? What makes those games more popular, and allows them to build better and better games by analyzing that data. It's a real advantage to them as they think about the next game or the next version around any of those games. And they kind of run end to end on AWS. So they run our application servers, their databases, their load balancers, Elastic MapReduce, all on EC2. They store all that data in S3, and they serve it all through CloudFront, always have. So the quote in the case study talked about how this has allowed them to scale seamlessly while letting everyone in their business really concentrate on the core business of making the best Facebook games and the best overall games they can make. So let's talk a little bit, switch gears again, talk a little bit about the ability to protect your content. So this is, again, an area where we hear over and over again customers asking how they might do this. So with our private content capabilities, you can have users authenticate with signed URLs. So each unique user can be given a policy-driven access control, decide who has access to their content, who does not. You can restrict based on a particular resource. You can restrict on the path, on the time, on the source IP. So, for example, if I was an enterprise customer and wanted to make sure that only people in my enterprise have access to this content, but I still, because of my remote offices, I want to make sure that I take advantage of a CDN, of CloudFront, so that each of those branch offices can use a public internet connection to stream that video for compliance training or for any number of training videos that I might provide for each of those locations. I can restrict that access to just my own enterprise or just a university campus or what have you. And I can generate signatures using asymmetric encryption to restrict who has access to my content, who's able to view it. So you can do that both in terms of just using standard HTTP SSL delivery. You can also, on the streaming side, use RTMPE to stream encrypted bytes over the wire. And part of that, it works closely, obviously, with S3, so you can have origin access identities also secure the content in S3. So not only are you securing it at the edge location to the user, but also, obviously, at the origin as well. And that all works together with AWS's identity and access management that I mentioned before. It gives you access to restrict who has the ability to control or configure various elements of your distribution. So that's kind of how we think about end-to-end security and the capabilities we provide today, both from an HTTP and a streaming perspective. So here's an example, another one of our 65+ case studies on our website. This is a case where somebody uses secure content to deliver and handle those traffic spikes. So Mediafly talks about how moving to CloudFront was one of the best decisions they made. They integrate with CloudFront, and they were able to take advantage of that advanced security while handling the spikes and the scalability. And so they're able to deliver those assets in a programmatic way. And I invite you to read the case study. We'll walk through how they're using us more fully, but that gives you a sense of why it's important to them. So let's spend a couple of minutes and talk a little bit more about reporting and analytics. We've taken a slightly different path, I think, many of the other offerings in the space. And our belief is we think it's important to provide the core access logs to anyone who wants them, and make those logs available right in your S3 bucket or whatever source destination you want. So we write them into an S3 bucket. You have full control over it. You can analyze it any way you want. There's a sample application built with Amazon's Elastic MapReduce. So you can generate these reports that would contain both the overall traffic volumes, the popularity of objects, a breakdown of that traffic both in terms of client IPs and the edge locations where those requests come in. You can see those reports both as tab delimited and delivered into whatever bucket you specify, as I mentioned before. And then there's a full ecosystem of partners. Because we took this W3 standard, you don't have to use our reports just because we provide this. You should have flexibility, and we think it's really important to have that flexibility. So there are a number of partners who've built solutions on this. We talk about one here, S3 Stat, that can automatically track your usage across CloudFront S3, both in terms of usage reported statistics, and create these graphical reports on a nightly basis for you, so you have them ready in the morning and you can email them to yourself if you like, kind of standard capabilities you expect, and then use that to identify any bottlenecks that might slow down use of your site or your content in any way. That's really the core benefit of that reporting and analytics. But those are just examples. Again, I think the flexibility of giving you those logs and letting you choose what's the right tool for you, what's the right format of reports for you is really important there. So here's another one of the case studies that you can read more about, but encoding.com, they use CloudFront in a variety of different ways in AWS, in fact, in a variety of ways. Encoding.com lets you encode videos with their core offering, encoding.com, and they've created a second offering called Vidly, which is this universal URL. And so the idea there being they want to know, right, and their end customers want to know who's accessing those videos, how are they accessing, where are they coming from, and so having the ability to analyze those dailies with specific reports for each customer to see how many times each of the videos are being played is really important to them. That's something they talk about in their case study as well. So we'll go through this in a little bit if we get a chance, but if we don't, I want to at least quickly highlight our management console. So there are a variety of tools that work with AWS and CloudFront, as well as obviously our API. But for people who are just getting started, they're full, and in fact there's a video tutorial of using the console as well. So the idea here is you can self-service sign up. You can do that anytime from anywhere, literally 24/7 by 365. This particular spiky customer I mentioned earlier, or the one that showed up this morning, those are oftentimes people who realize at the last minute, hey, I have this video campaign, or I have this time-specific offering that I want to make sure I can scale. You don't need to talk to anyone to do that. You can literally configure that going straight to our console to create and manage your distributions. You can use the programmatic APIs to integrate in your own workflows, your own content management systems. There have been a bunch of tools, both processing us into Joomla and many of the other content management systems. But if you have your own homegrown system, you can also integrate directly with the APIs. And being able to configure that seamlessly, I think, is also very important to our customers. So this is a case where Photopedia talks about that as well. They have a number of widgets that were featured on the web. They were quickly able to enable a CloudFront distribution for those images, literally days after CloudFront launched, so they were an early customer. They found it very easy to implement, and they got the performance they needed for their customers. So again, another one of the case studies that you can kind of read about on AWS website. So again, let's talk a little bit about the price. And I think cost is certainly a key area for content content delivery networks. we have a track record of continually reducing the price for CloudFront and AWS. We've done this 4 times in the last 3 years for CloudFront. We have this pay-as-you-go pricing with or without commitments. So there's really kind of 2 ways you can think of it. The default case we've talked about so far entirely today is really around this pay-as-you-go pricing, and that's very convenient for many of our customers. There's a second version that I like to kind of compare to the Elastic Compute Services reserved capacity, reserved instances. So EC2 has this notion of reserved instances. CloudFront has this notion of reserved capacity. So if you know how much capacity you're going to need, you can obviously reserve that amount of capacity for your specific needs. And by signing up for a reserved capacity, you get a discount off of that public rate card. So for people who are going to have unpredictable traffic, that pay-as-you-go pricing makes a lot of sense. I kind of equate this to, I drink Diet Coke, so I use a Diet Coke analogy. When I'm traveling, I might simply like the convenience of buying a single can of Diet Coke at a time because I don't necessarily know how much I'm going to consume. But at home, I don't buy them 1 can at a time. I buy them by a case. And when I buy them by a case, I'm committing to use that capacity, obviously. But I also get a discount off of that individual purchase price. So sometimes I like the convenience of pay-as-you-go, and that's really advantageous to me. Other times I like that reserved capacity model. And with reserved capacity, there's no overages, right? Like overage fees, like some of the other services in the industry have. If I need to buy more, I can just go buy more, and I can move to a pay-as-you-go price. Or I can sign up for another reserved capacity. So there are these. We have tiered pricing. The rates go down as your volume increases, and those longer-term commitments are also term commitments are available for people who know that they're going to consume a certain amount of capacity over time. So here's another case study around that. In this case, it's Envoy Media, who talked about how they save money by moving to CloudFront. They are able to pay less than they were paying before because they were able to lower their bandwidth costs. And on our pricing, hopefully you can see this. The slide looks pretty small as I look at it here. But you can see on our website, we actually charge by region. There's a different charge by region. And it's really a cost-following model. Where our transit costs are higher, we charge more. And also on the there's this section over here that's called reserved capacity pricing. For people who are interested, in reserved capacity pricing, we have a quick link for you to contact us, and we'll happy to engage in terms of reserving specific capacity for your needs. But the default pay-as-you-go pricing is here on our webpage. And as we update our pricing, it's always updated on the webpage. So, we highlighted just a few of our 65-plus case studies for using CloudFront. These are some others that we could have talked about, some that we did, some that we didn't. But wanted to really walk you through that there's a large range of customers using CloudFront. We've been very happy with the reaction, both in terms of growing the number of customers and some of the name brand customers who are using CloudFront and moving to CloudFront from other providers, either from a performance or from a cost perspective. And we invite you to take a look for those of you who haven't been using CloudFront so far. So this is the summary slide in terms of how you would get started. For those of you who aren't existing CloudFront customers, the way you get started is literally go to the AWS webpage. If you go to aws.amazon.com/CloudFront, you're directed to how to get started. You can use S3 as your own origin, or for storing your objects, you can create that distribution on CloudFront, and then you place the CloudFront URL on your webpage. And as a special thank you for those, given all of our audio issues before. Again, I can't apologize enough about that. We're sending each of you a $25 credit for using CloudFront, so really appreciate the time you took today. We're going to segue now, and I'm going to answer some questions. So Jared's going to join us again, and we'll talk about specific questions that people asked.
Thank you, Tal. Again, we sincerely apologize about the audio difficulties that we had earlier.
We're not good at telephones here.
So we're going to now turn and answer a couple questions from the audience. We have about 10 minutes left, so we wanted to address them. So Tal, Jeff asked us, is there an expiration on a cached CloudFront object?
Yeah. So So Jeff, you can think about object expiration a couple ways. When you think of object expiration, you can set the time to live for your objects both in your origin, like on the object itself in the origin, and CloudFront will honor that time to live. If you don't set a time to live, our default is 24 hours. And so if that object is in cache and it's been longer than 24 hours, we will go and check if it's been updated or not. If it's not updated, we'll continue to serve it. If your origin goes down for some reason and we're unable to reach it, we would also serve a cached version of that object. If you make a mistake, right, and this is, so we talked a little bit about this in terms of programmatic invalidation. Let's say you set a very long time to live, or not quite a long time to live, and you decide, hey, I need to remove that object from cache. You can use programmatic invalidation to remove that item from cache.
Thanks, Paul. David asked if there are plans to open a POP location in Australia. I guess that goes to the larger question of how do you determine where to open up POP locations?
Sure. So really appreciate the question, David. This is one of the longest running items on our forum. So yes, we are looking at Australia. I can't say today when that location is going to be open, but the thing I would say is we're actively looking at expanding. It's something I literally came out of the meeting just before this webinar talking about where we're expanding to. In Australia is a location that I hear a lot of customer feedback about, and so it's one that we continue to look at. All I can say is stay tuned. When we have something to say about Australia, you'll see it on the forum and you'll see us send mail about it. But rest assured, we completely hear you on the need to do a better job with Australia.
Thanks, Carl. Clive has asked us what type of Flash player is used for CloudFront.
Yeah. So Clive, great question on the player front. There are a number of different players that you can choose. In fact, we have on our site a number of tutorials around the various players. So there's JW Player has a tutorial. They have a nice wizard that helps you. There's a good tutorial about OSMF from Adobe. There's a good Flow Player tutorial as well. You can really use whichever kind of player you'd like. We just put up a few tutorials for some of the more often used players, but really up to you there.
Okay. Andrew asked, how is HTTP streaming different from RTMP with regard to CloudFront distributions?
Good question, Andrew. So when you think about streaming, you've kind of got a couple of choices. So customers think about both HTTP progressive download and RTMP streaming. HTTP progressive download really works on any basically any device. RTMP, some people will say RTMP has some advantages, and there's actually a pretty good thread on this on our forum as well. It's going to go into probably more detail than we have time to today on this call. But we have customers doing both. It's a little bit about preference. Some, I don't want to say it's religious, but there are definitely strong opinions here on which is better and in what cases. I think the biggest issue today that tends to tip the scale more than any other on the streaming side is what devices are going to view your video. And unfortunately, Adobe doesn't have a client on the iOS devices, so RTMP streaming doesn't really work for iOS devices. So customers who care a lot about that are choosing to use HTTP streaming. And in many ways, there are others who would argue that HTTP is really caught up for Flash streaming. But both are important. There's some advantages of each, and I don't want to shortchange either one.
Okay. Lenny asked, is it possible to host Facebook apps on CloudFront?
Sure, Lenny. So great question. I talked about EA Playfish. Playfish has, I didn't say this in the opening, but they had various points 5 of the top 10 Facebook games. Facebook games are a clear area where we see a number of our customers providing, using CloudFront to provide solutions to host on Facebook. We just highlighted one today in the case study. Just take a look at Playfish's case study. You'll get more detail about how they're hosting a Facebook game. But absolutely, hosting Facebook games is a core use case for CloudFront.
Thanks, Paul. Mike asked us how he could deliver private or secure downloads to his customers via CloudFront?
Sure. So we had a slide. I'm not sure when that question came in relative to that slide. I walked through a specific cases that you'd want to use secure content, and really when you think about secure content, if you go back, I think we're going to make this available. It's really giving me audio problem. I hope we're making it available later for secure content. I talked through a case study with MediaFly. They talked through how they're using CloudFront to deliver secure content. But if you go back to that slide, when you think about it, if you do go back to this, it was slide number 22. The way you can think about private content is you could set a policy and set controls based on restricting to a particular item, a particular path, time, source IP, and you can generate an asymmetric encrypted signature that you're going to use. So you can use that to protect the content. You can also turn on HTTPS for end-to-end SSL delivery. If you're streaming, you can use RTMP, and you would also use origin access identities to secure their content in S3. And then it's up to you, but you can also decide if you want to use identity access management to restrict who has the ability to modify or configure that content distribution. There's a whole section in our developer guide of how you use this, and so I'd encourage you to take a look at that as a next step.
Thanks, Tal. Thomas asked, is the ability to add domain certs to a CloudFront distribution with the CNAME on the roadmap?
So there's two versions. Was it Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Thomas, there's two versions of that, and I'm going to assume I know which one you mean, but just for everyone else. So you can create a CNAME today for any distribution. So you could say, let's say, images.pulseroff.com, right? And or whatever CNAME you like. You can do that today on any distribution you like. Where I think Thomas's question is really focused on is today for HTTPS, we don't support CNAMEs. We don't let you use a custom certificate. What you do with HTTPS is you get a domain 12345.cloudfront.net. And so for many customers where your end customer is never going to see that distribution name, that works perfectly well. In some other cases, we've heard from customers that they would like their own custom domain. So if I was doing my shopping cart for pulseroff.com, actually it's a site that I own, but it doesn't have a shopping cart. It's just a simple site on CloudFront. Anyway, if I wanted to have a shopping cart, you might want to use your own custom certificate. Today, that's not supported for HTTPS. That is something we hear over and over again. That's something on our roadmap. Again, we're working on it. When we have more to share there, we will definitely post about it on our webpage and also send out email to folks who are registered customers of CloudFront.
Okay. Another good question. And then now Joe asks us, am I only paying for bandwidth usage or a combination of bandwidth and storage on the edge servers?
So great question, Joe, was it?
Yeah.
So Joe, you don't pay for storage on the edge location. So you only pay for bandwidth and requests. And for most customers who are serving large objects, it's really the bandwidth price that matters. But no, the storage in each of the CloudFront edge locations is essentially free, right? That's part of our cache. That's how we provide a good service to you. We don't charge for storage, and that's a great point that I didn't make. That's different than some of the other CDNs out there. We just provide that as part of the service.
Okay. Now we had another question, and this one was a question related to S3 and how that works with CloudFront. I believe that John asked this question about what's the synergy between CloudFront and S3 for storage?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, when you're creating a distribution, you need to have a source for where we go look for that content. So today, actually from the very beginning, S3 was at default origin. So it's sort of the origin of record, if you will. So if you were creating a distribution, you would normally start with, you create an S3 bucket, you put the object in S3 just like it says on this page, and then the distribution points to that bucket, and then we serve the content. And you use that URL on your web page. That's that relationship. We work obviously very closely with S3. and so we're able to make sure that we serve the latest version of content from S3. You don't have to use S3. You can use your own custom origin. You can use EC2. S3 is a fantastic origin. Really encourage it, but it's up to you. You don't have to use it.
Well, thank you, Tal, and that wraps up today's presentation. Again, we wanted to apologize for the audio difficulties. We hope the $25 CloudFront credit will help mitigate, and we plan on having another session next month.
Will we get a better phone?
Will we have a better phone? And we will send out more information on that. So again, thank you, Tal. Thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. Those who attended, you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to this presentation, along with a copy of the presentation. And I encourage you to periodically check the webinar section of aws.com to see listings of other upcoming webinars or virtual events. So you can go to our aws.amazon.com website, and you can look for upcoming events or look in our webinar section. On behalf of Amazon Web Services and our presenters, thank you for joining us today. And to learn more about content delivery using Amazon CloudFront, again, you can go to aws.amazon.com/CloudFront. Thank you.